Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood, and I have got an incredible guest with, well, it's an amazing story to share with you today. We're going to cover so many different aspects of health and business and being a woman. But Deb, Korea, and I were actually introduced by somebody else online. We had a fabulous conversation. She's also a podcast host, and she's got a really important message to share with all of us. So without anything else to introduce you, Deb, say hello and tell people all about you.
Hello. Well, first of all, Vicky, I am absolutely delighted to be here and honored. I have listened to some of your other podcast episodes and such great information and especially such great information for women. It's a challenging time. And it's funny, I think we could probably have said that when we were cave women, right? But yeah, it's and so in many cases we do thrive on those challenges, but it doesn't mean they're not hard. And so my story in a nutshell is almost 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. They originally said it was stage 0, which is don't worry about it. We're just going to kind of watch stuff for a while. Right. And then that diagnosis over the course of about 6 months changed to stage 4, triple positive metastatic breast cancer. Wow. Stage 4 is not considered, especially for breast cancer, curable. Now it could go away and it might not ever, raise its ugly head again. But, and metastatic basically means that it has spread. It threw me for a loop, obviously, because I was running my own business. And as I told my doctor, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. And she looked at me like, well, darling, you got to make time. And I really did think I was going to sail through everything. Unfortunately, I didn't. My very first chemo treatment, I got catastrophic complications. Oh, wow. At that point in time, as far as they knew, I was the only person who ever survived the particular complication I got. The reason I survived was my doctor had lost another patient to it. So she knew exactly what it was and what to do immediately. I ended up in the hospital for 7 weeks, in and out of surgeries, in and out of ICU. I developed septic shock. And that has been far harder on me than the breast cancer.
Right. I think just to stop you there for 1 second, I think there's a couple of things I want to pull out of that. Number one is the speed with which it went from 0 to 4.
Yes.
Oh, and totally the shocking. Fact that a lot of people will put off going to get a diagnosis, and then they may, like you, be told just keep an eye on it. And the importance is to make sure that you get regularly checked so that you don't miss it. I think the second thing is to say that people just think, well, just chemo and that's all you can do, but not realizing that there potentially can be other complications when you start that process. Right.
And there's so many options that you can now choose.
Right. And so it's a bit of a minefield, but fortunately for you, you had somebody who the outcome for the other patient wasn't great, but it meant that she had got or he had got the understanding of what to do and acted quickly. I think that's the thing, act fast.
Right. Well, and several things also played into that. We're 5 minutes from the hospital. So they got me there very quickly. I knew something was wrong. I had 3 days worth of, these are kind of chemo reaction, right? Because my first chemo was not chemo. It was 8 different drugs. And so I felt cruddy, right? Which we expect. And so I kept thinking, this is normal. Right. We did call into the doctor. Good thing to do, right? To say, here's what's going on. And they said, okay, we want you to come in. Well, we didn't make it that far because then what happened was excruciating pain hit. And I knew that was not normal. And that's when I told my beloved husband to call the ambulance. And so I got to meet the fire department. That was great fun. And I mean, I am like I am right now all the time, including in the ambulance. I'm chatty happy.
The attitude, the positive attitude, no doubt would have been a real positive when something like this massive curveball could have really thrown you for a six.
Right.
And septic shock, just to help people to understand what that is.
It is, the statistics vary, but so you get sepsis.
Yes.
So you have an infection and then it turns to sepsis, which means it's going throughout your body. Then it turns into septic shock.
Right.
You know, for some people, it takes a long period of time. For me, it took, you know, a very short period of time, because what happened was my colon perforated. And so all of that ickiness that's in there went out into my body. And so, you know, but the statistics say that between 65 and 75% of the time, 65 to 75% of the time, it is fatal. Because what it does is it attacks your organs.
Right.
And my kidneys are not happy. You know, the rest of my organs seem to, you know, kind of be going merrily along, but my kidneys will probably eventually become a major problem. And so, but yeah, it was one of those things, but we kept insisting. Like one of the things, so, you know, I'm laying there in the emergency room. I was tachycardic. My heart rate went up to 200. I thought I could fly, right? You know, I mean, my little motor was going.
Yeah, seriously.
But then, you know, by that point, I was very seriously ill, and so I was not chatty Cathy. But I remember the surgeon and the oncologist out in the hall arguing because the oncologist was, you know, talking about, okay, we need you to operate, and the surgeon, bless his little heart, as we would say here in the South, said, why are we bothering? She'll be dead by midnight.
Oh, and you're listening to this.
Now, it wasn't quite like that, but my husband said it was pretty close. And luckily, the oncologist, and she's not my oncologist, she was oncologist on call for the practice, but, you know, this wonderful woman got in his face and said, you will do this. And he clearly saved my life. He did another surgery that was about 7.5 hours. He actually had to tap out. But he was one of those doctors, and this goes back to, you got to stand up for yourself. The man worked better with patients who were unconscious. He had the bedside manner of a toad. You know, and I fired him. I said, you're not touching me again. You know, but yeah, it really was one of those things where everything fell into place. My husband was, of course, you know, hey, you're going to do everything that you possibly can. Things like that, you know, and
this is such an important thing for people to hear, because so many people, particularly I think in the UK, because we get our NHS service and our hospital service is all for free. So we feel almost like we have to do what we're told. And there is very much this idea that the doctors know everything.
Oh, yes.
We know that they don't, and that they know best, and they're God. And we somehow have to just kind of shut up and put up, rather than going, actually, no, I know my body better than you do. And I am not happy with the way that you're speaking to me or what's going on. But the fact that you also had some support, I mean, obviously makes a difference too. But I think this is so important for people to take on board. It is your body. It is your life. And if you're not going to take agency for it, who hell is?
Right. You know, and I love that you mentioned the payment system, right? Because here in the States, we of course have private and then government insurance, depending on your income level. Very, very fortunate. We have incredible insurance personally. And this whole journey, there's been one thing that they denied. And, you know, and it just got stuck in what they call peer review. And so we just did something else. But, and I hit the 2 million mark a long time ago. I mean, you know, this has not been an inexpensive journey. But yeah, we do believe those people know better than we do. And I think it's changing as generations changes, right? Your mother, my mother would have said, yes, doctor, I will do whatever you say.
Correct.
Never questioned it, right? We're kind of at the now, wait a minute, you know, and the generations after us are like, no, you know.
Which is, thank goodness for that, because, you know, part of the reason that I do what I do and I got into the world of health in the way that I did was because I saw the detrimental effect on both my parents, who had very different issues going on, but because they were following what the doctor said, they got worse. And both of them, they're no longer with us, but both of them died, not from anything to do with the very thing that was being treated, but the side effects of the medication and what they've been told to do from the doctors.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't question, or now, oh good heavens, what we do is we go to Google, Dr. Google, as I call it, and you know, okay, that's all right. And I've done it. I mean, you know, just for clarification on some terms and things like that. But folks, AI is not your friend in this circumstance.
No, it just agrees with you.
Yeah, you know, or it is finding the good, the bad, the ugly. And so, you know, it's okay to say, hey, you know, whatever, you know, my chat GPT has named itself Stan. And and so it's okay to say, hey, Stan, I've been diagnosed with this.
Yeah.
Here's what the doctors have suggested. What questions should I ask?
Nice.
That's okay, because our brain is shut off. But don't say, tell me what I should do, because that comes back to, you know, who knows what information you're going to get.
Yeah. And this is a very good point. And I'm so glad you brought it up, because if I'm going to use it for anything from a client health point of view and what is the best course of action, what it really is good at is if I ask the right questions, and I've trained mine to be able to look at all of the individual blood testing results that my clients have had from their GPs and practitioners, and I can tell them what to look at and to see the patterns that I want to know if they're there. But if I just put all of that stuff in and said, this is my diagnosis, goodness knows what it'd come back with.
Oh yeah. You know, and you know, it might come back and say you need to, you know, eat greens and you know, and avoid anything orange. You know, and who knows what the heck it's going to come back with. And I joke, many years ago, I worked for an oncologist, and I also worked for the American Cancer Society. So I say, well, I know just enough to be dangerous. But you know, it is one of those things that we absolutely positively have to do, though, is be proactive and do your research. You know, what are alternative treatments? I did choose traditional. I did chemo, surgery, radiation, none of that. Well, radiation went well, but you know, surgery also didn't go well. But yeah, know what your options are. For some people, they're going to say, I'm not going to do any of that. Okay.
Right. And the thing is, you said,
decision.
Ask questions. Yeah, don't just take what you are told as being gospel, and understand that there is always going to be an alternative. And in some cases, ask for a second opinion, ask for another doctor or specialist's opinion, because like you said, with the two of them arguing, they may be in the same arena, but they don't necessarily think the same or have had the same experience. And I think that is such a powerful message, because we are in charge, aren't we? Ultimately.
We are. You know, and it's funny because when I tell people, you know, you can fire your doctors, I had someone who said, you can? And I said, you know, especially here in the States, right? Basically, they do work for you. Now, granted, it's somebody else who's paying the bills and all those things. But if you're not comfortable with your doctor, then get rid of them. I fired 4 during this journey. They were all good doctors. They just didn't fit me. You know, and I knew they were going to be long term. You know, it's not, you know, like when you go to what, you know, here in the States, it's called a primary care doctor. I go to her, you know, every once in a while for snuffles, right? You know, and so that's okay. But yeah, long term doctors, you need to get, or any type of practitioner, right? You need to get somebody you're comfortable with.
Yeah. And you need to be able to feel happy and able to be vulnerable, and to know that you're not going to get judged, and you're not going to get told off like a child or any of that stuff, which I have seen, you know, from so many people in the world of supposedly helping others.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I had one doctor. So I, you know, aside from all my other issues, I developed gallstones. Maybe I would have anyway, maybe I wouldn't, who knows. But anyhow, I knew I had gallstones. The emergency room doctors had done the tests. We knew I had them. So they sent me to a gastroenterologist, a GI, right? And I went in and saw him, and I've had multiple abdominal surgeries, multiple. And he did not look at my chart before he starts talking to me, right? And so, you know, I start to tell my sad tale of woe, and I get that I'm going to throw any doctor's schedule off, you know, because I'm going to talk a lot, right? But he needed to know certain things, and he literally shook his finger at me And he said, you don't talk, you just listen.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, right. And so he tells me what 99% of the time would have been valid information.
Right.
But I'm special. And so he finishes talking to me, and I, and he says, well, so then I'm the petulant child, right?
Right.
And I said, you told me not to talk. And he
So
said,
I'm not saying anything.
I know, right? And he said, well, no, I just needed to tell you that. And I said, okay, first of all, I know I have gallstones. The emergency room doctors, did the ultrasound. You clearly did not look at my chart. You also did not look at my chart to see this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And, and he was one that I ended up firing, because he said, let's wait, let's not. And it was funny because and I mean, again, for the normal person, what he would have been saying was right. He said, let's changing your diet, things like that would work. And so I, left his office, called my surgeon. I have my own surgeon. And I went in and saw him, and he said, what you doing on Monday? I said, get my gallbladder out. And he said, yeah.
Yes.
And so, that was, procedure. But I went back to that GI, and he said, well, how are you doing? I said, I feel fabulous. And he said, see, I told you if you followed my instructions. And I cut him off. I said, and I told you need to read somebody's chart before you see them, because I don't even have my gallbladder anymore.
Yeah. Amazing. Wow. But this is where, I mean, you have got the confidence, and you've got the personality and the ability to say what you need to say. But for so many people, that is something that they just do not have the skill or feel that they can't have the permission to actually do. And this is where I think there's such a massive crossover with health and well-being, but also business, because how we run our business as women, you don't necessarily, I can be really powerful over here in business, but when it comes to my health, not the case. And I've never seen that. I've usually seen that the people who are powerful and confident in their businesses also tend to take agency and understand and prioritize their health. Whereas the ones who may be successful, but business is a struggle, also tend to be the ones who listen to too many other people about their own health. And it's just, it's just an observation over the years that there's definitely a correlation there. But you're definitely a person who takes charge and doesn't worry about firing somebody.
Oh, yeah. It was funny. I ended up back in the emergency room for, another issue a couple years later. And that same surgeon that I had fired was who the on-call was. And it was so funny because I have no idea what happened, but I know he got spoken sharply to. And so he starts to come into the room, and he sees that it's me. And I could tell he thought, oh, crap. And I said, it's okay, come on in. But yeah, it is, whether it's in business, whether it's, in the grocery store, whatever, we have to stand up for ourselves, but it is hard. It's really hard.
I think it's one of those things that, and I don't know what your take on this is, it's not the norm. Which means that we don't get the opportunity to practice it. And anything that we don't practice a lot does feel hard.
Right.
But the more that we get the opportunity to practice it, the easier it becomes.
Right.
No matter what it is. And I think this is the thing, because we don't give ourselves, particularly as women, I think, to practice. We don't give ourselves the permission to allow ourselves to say what we need to say. We don't get practiced at doing it in any situation.
Right. And of course, one of the things when you're told you have a serious illness like cancer, your brain shorts out. And so one of the things I tell people is take somebody with you to those first couple of appointments. Let them know the questions you have. They might have their own, because, you're going to go in and go, and, but also it is important to have an advocate. My husband was the person who knew exactly what I wanted. He stood up for everything. He had to go against my mother, who is a force, or was, she passed away a couple of years ago, a force of nature herself.
Right.
And he had to go against her, and so that's always kind of a challenge, is, make sure that the people on your side, I call them your tribe members. I'm a warrior and they're my tribe members. Make sure that they know what you want and that they're going to stand up also, and advocate for you. And it's the same thing in an office environment. Maybe somebody gives a presentation and takes credit for your work.
Right.
You might not be comfortable, depending on this, but maybe somebody else is going to say, now, wait a minute. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be you. And I think that's such an important and valid point. But also when you bring up the family dynamics, because depending on obviously the positioning in the family. So we're talking about a mother, and I do have a child, but she's a grown-up child. But when you're a mom, you're always a mom, and you always
you're that mother bear.
Right. No matter how old, and even if they're married and they've got their own kids, I think there's still that element of somehow believing that as the mom, I know better, even though you may not have been through it at all.
And when my mom lived in Kansas, so she had to fly. I can't imagine that phone call. When my husband called her and said, "You need to get here, and it's probably not going to be soon enough," because at that, when he called her, that was when they were saying she's not going to make it. But we joked that she didn't come out to help; she came out to take over. And there were a couple of things that she did that my husband objected to, and I didn't know about them at the time. And he had to go to the staff, the hospital and the staff, and say, she's not the one in charge. And she ended up staying for 4.5 months. Now, I am an only child. And so her only, the mama bear instinct was really strong.
Huge.
But, and it was great, because frequently, like when I was in the hospital, I was not alone. I was never alone. There was always somebody who was there spending the night, all of those things. And so that was fabulous. But I finally, when she started rearranging my kitchen, that's when I thought, nope, time to go home.
Time to go home. That was the clue. And I think that's such an important point that you bring up as well, because if you are somebody who's very independent and is, you are successful in business and you are used to running a team or a big company, then the same mindset says, well, you know what, I'm okay with this. But actually, we all need that tribe. We all need, whether it's in business or whether it's in family. I'm a great believer in the phrase, it takes a village.
It does.
And I think it does. And each person has roles, but sometimes those roles can be interchangeable. But recognizing that it's okay to allow others to step up and step in.
And more importantly, it's okay to ask for help.
That's a huge one, isn't it? Yeah. And when you were in that bed then for 7 weeks in hospital, that just for your husband to be there all the time, well, that wouldn't have been possible, would it, if mom hadn't have come over?
Yeah. And because after the first couple weeks, probably, the first 5-ish weeks are pretty blurry in my brain. I had this massive infection, and so I slept a lot. And and so he was able to take time off and be there, but then he did have to go back to work. His employer was very, very understanding. But I think it was also for his mental health. He needed to go back to work. He needed to not be around sick people, and to have a little bit of normal life, and so that was very important for him.
And so whilst this was going on, what was it like from your work point of view? Tell people, what were you doing at the time when this all started?
So I do have my own company. It's Wise Women Communications. It's a marketing agency. And obviously for those 7 weeks, everything stopped, but then when I was able to, I started working again, partially because, first of all, I like what I do. I like my clients, and it gave me something to think about. And I was very fortunate because I did tell my clients, obviously it's a personal choice as to what you want to do and how much you want to disclose. And they could have had several different reactions. The first would have been, well, you can't do the work, so we're firing you. Right. The second could have been, well, you can't do, we want you to take time for yourself, so we're going to hire somebody else.
Right.
My clients said, what can we do to help?
Brilliant.
I picked the right clients.
Right.
And so they, they did. And still, I mean, almost 11 years into this, I'm still in active treatment. I go in every 21 days. I get an infusion, and I'm down for the count for a couple of days. So
Right.
they know, there's a couple of days where I may or may not, be very responsive. I still try to. And I tell people hospitals and doctors' offices have really good Wi-Fi. At least here in the States they do. And so I'll sit there, they got the needles in me and I'm going boogity, boogity, boogity on my phone,
Right.
and still working.
And that's the joy, isn't it, of now everything being digital and available to us almost in our pocket. You
Right.
you can literally be anywhere. And
Mhm.
as long as your brain is functioning reasonably well,
Right.
you can
And I
bring us
do
into
watch that, right? Is today a fuzzy day? Maybe I shouldn't make any important decisions.
So you also though have an amazing podcast, because you are very much somebody who likes to help people. Your ethos is empowering women to stand up for themselves, but also to be the business person, to have the life that they want to have. And tell people about your podcast.
Well, thank you. It's called The Business Power Hour. That's its trademark name. That's why I have to say the. And I've done over 1,100 episodes. And what I love about it, I get to meet cool people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people say, what do you get out of it? Oh, I get to meet really cool people. And with technology, I get to meet cool people around the world, like we're doing right now. And, because it's mine, I can do what I want. I have interviewed a woman who started a franchise business of her own as a way to get back at her father who sexually abused her starting at age 4. I talked to another woman who I actually know out in the real world, who started a nonprofit because her son committed suicide. And plus, we do talk about business things and things like that, but a lot of it is, the personal motivation. What are the stories behind it? Because I think when we hear that somebody else has gone through something, we think, okay, I can do that too. I'm not alone in what I'm going through.
And that's such an important message, because when you're in it and when you are in the thick of it, you do genuinely believe that you are the only person thinking the way that you're thinking and feeling what you're feeling. So talking about that, when you sat in that doctor's office and you said, I haven't got time for this, what were you actually feeling? Or because that's a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it?
Right,
It's kind of that denial of, no, I'm not going there. But then when you kind of left, what was it that was going through your brain?
Excuse me, sheer panic. And I'd gone into the office by myself because, we were expecting that it was going to be, simple, easy, basic. And, so I'd gone in by myself. And so the first thing was, I get out to the car and I didn't cry. I didn't cry then. But obviously, I think they probably see that a lot where somebody sits out in their car and cries. But the first thing I did, of course, was to contact my husband and say, well, this is going to be a little bumpier ride than we were expecting. And I wanted to wait to be able to call my mother till I was a little bit more composed. But it was funny because then I texted my best friend back in Colorado and she didn't respond. And I thought, it's a weekday. She's working. So I texted again later on and she still didn't respond. Well, then of course you get your feelings hurt, right? And you're also thinking, okay, did I send it to the right person? Right. And later on she responded and she said, I'm really having trouble dealing with this. Give me a little bit. Okay. And then, she actually came out twice to help take care of me, all sorts of things. But I think that's one of the things that we as the patient forget is it's hard for other people. And I had some people that have never talked to me again, or they will not talk about the cancer. And okay, that's fine. But other people stepped up in ways that were just incredible.
And this is such an interesting part of the story, isn't it? Because the people who potentially you thought were going to respond in a specific way didn't necessarily. And the ones that you thought were not really going to be actually end up being the ones who are a really important part of your journey, which just goes to show that we don't necessarily truly know people until something happens that's unusual and different. And that's where people really show who they actually are deep down. And we understand that we all run on certain programming and values and belief systems, and our emotional nervous system is not the same. Some of us are geared up to be able to handle more things than others, or be better capable of putting on a brave face.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
What's real me and what actually is the bravado and the kind of I'm putting on this brave face, but deep down inside, which is why I wanted to ask you what you really felt. And then when you got that, obviously you knew that things were not good when you were in pain, and you end up, you know, in this horrific position where you're in hospital for 7 weeks. I mean, tell people what that was like, because I think anybody who's been into hospital knows it's not the greatest of environments.
No.
It's noisy, it's light, there's people coming and going, and you're supposed to be trying to rest, but it's impossible.
Right. Oh, you know, I know anybody who says, "Hey, I slept good in the hospital." I'm like, you got drugged, right?
Yeah.
You know, part of the problem was one of the big infections that I developed was something that was very contagious and could have been very serious for other people, which meant I could not leave my room.
So you're in isolation, basically.
Yeah. And now it was a giant room. And this was really funny because I was in, you know, this standard hospital room. And my aunt also came out with my mom. And my aunt at that point was a nurse practitioner. She has since retired. But the room across the hall from me was this giant room. And one entire wall were windows and all sorts of stuff. And they had carted me off to go, you know, do some test that I had to do. And she pulled my husband aside and she said, "You go tell them that when she comes back, she's going in that big room." Because they all knew I was going to be there a long time. And Tom was like, "I can do that?" Right? You know, kind of like, and she said, "Yes." And so they did. I mean, they didn't question it. They just moved me to this giant room. But it was really funny because I was like, I don't think this, I'm in a different place.
Is my brain going now as well?
Was like, yeah. But yeah, it was, and it was right around Christmas time too, right? And so I had people who wanted me to decorate.
Get into the Christmas spirit. Yeah.
I would not do it because I didn't want it to be too comfortable.
Okay.
You know, and it was funny because they ignored me and they, you know, they did stuff anyway, and that was perfectly fine. But yeah, it was like, no. But it's funny because, you know, when my mother-in-law had a major stroke, they told us, you need to decorate her room to make her feel more at home. Right. And so we did, you know, and things like that. But yeah, so that's kind of one of those weird things is, you know, what do you want it to look like? But like one of the things, you know, is, you know, brought in like a blanket. Right. It meant a lot to me. Now, you know, it would have to go off frequently and be washed. But yeah, there are some things you can do to make it a little bit more comfortable so that it doesn't seem quite so much like a hospital. You know, you can now play music. I mean, that's, you know, as long as you're not disturbing other patients. Yeah. And because of those infections, I could not have a roommate ever again. I mean, you know, anytime I go into anything, they cannot put anybody in with me. Which is kind of a weird concept, right? I'm going to have that it's called VRE. And so I will have that infection in me for the rest of my life.
So do they know, or do you know how, is it just one of life's weird anomalies, or is there a reason how we were exposed to it?
It's one of the, you know, there are bugs that you get in a hospital, you know, and you might hear one of the things that they talk about is MRSA. And that's an acronym for something, and I don't know what all it stands for. And they tested me for that, but I didn't get it because, of course, you know, you don't stay in your room. You do get carted off for X-rays and surgery.
And you're in waiting areas and different, and there's just so many things and people coming and going all the time.
Yeah, and it was really funny because they, had to give me incredible antibiotics. And they kept having to up them, right? And I have an allergy to antibiotics anyway, because I'm a delicate, special child. And I remember they had to get special permission from the insurance company to give me this antibiotic because I took it 4 times a day, and it was $1,000 a pill. Wow. And, of course, the insurance company didn't bat an eye. They, sure, whatever, which really was kind of surprising. But I ended up, of course, getting an allergy to that. And and I mean, that's one of the other things is they start pumping you full of all of these drugs. And so pay attention. One of the times they brought something in and I looked at it and I went, "What is this for?" "Well, the doctor ordered it." I said, no, that was not my question.
Nice.
My question was, "What is this for?" "Well, the doctor ordered it." I said, "Well, I'm not taking it. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to take it." And so I ended up with a whole little row of these pills because they kept bringing them in and I wouldn't take it. And honestly, nobody knew. It was like, what the heck? Nobody knew what and somebody finally got it taken off my chart. But again, that comes back to being the advocate.
Do you know what? It's so important. And I think, especially when it comes to medication, because I've worked with so many people and, a number of them have fallen into that trap of taking a medication and then you get another medication to deal with the side effects for the first medication. And they end up on a shopping list and they don't actually know what any of them do.
Well, and especially when you've got multiple doctors.
Right. And exactly that. So you have a specialist over here giving you this, and a specialist over there. They don't talk to each other. No. And there's no kind of communication about, what are the contraindications of this one with this one. And fortunately,
maybe AI would be a good would be good for that. Right?
Now you can find out. But I remember distinctly that my dad, he had a triple heart bypass. He thought he was going to have 3, and then they opened him up and he needed 6 actually. Right. And then he also subsequently had another heart attack after that. I think he had another 2, but he survived. However, on one of the stays in hospital, they prescribed something, and one of the nurses was adamant, but like you, he said, "I'm not taking it," because he knew. He said, "If I take that, you will kill me. Do you want that on your conscience?" And so he used to go in to any emergency. If we ever had to call the ambulance, because later on he suffered a lot of panic attacks, which he felt like a heart attack.
Right.
Once you've had a heart attack, it's really hard.
Yes.
So he used to have this printed sheet, and we all had one, to take with us to give to the doctors, just to give him the whole history, because he goes, "I know they're not going to read it on their screen. So here, and this is the medication, and this is what I will not take." And only through that, because of a bad experience that potentially could have killed him. And like you, he said, "No, I'm just not doing it." But it's hard, as you said, to go up against supposedly the powers that be know better.
Yeah, my doctor told me that one time they had somebody who was in and they, parted her shirt, right, to start doing whatever treatment they were going to do. And in magic marker, she had written, "I am DNR," right? Do not resuscitate. And, because those forms get lost, they don't get, and she was like, and they said, I mean, and here in the States, that's not legally binding. I mean, they can ignore it and they can still, and sometimes they do. But he said, we knew what her wishes were very clearly.
Which is a good thing in a way, but also the fact that you have to do that speaks volumes to the unfortunately the flaws in the system. And again, this is where we've got to liken it to running a business. When you're observing on the outside, you can see clearly what's not working. But when you're in it and you're in the melee, it's another story, isn't it?
Right. And that's where it is so important. It comes back to, having that tribe, not being alone. You need mentors, you need mastermind groups, you need whatever it is. And I don't care what level you are, you need those to help you through that. And I think more importantly, especially when you are, the business owner, the business leader, because you think, well, I can't show any weakness. Okay, well, maybe those people are not, in your organization, but it's a peer or something like that. Somebody just to bounce some things off of. Hey, this is what's going on. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think that's so important for business owners to hear, because there is that element of, I should know. I should know what to do, but you can't know what you don't know. And especially if events crop up that you've never come across before. And we're not reinventing the wheel, are we, when it comes to business? There's usually somebody who has done something similar, if not exactly the same.
Right.
And can mentor
and we
you
go to
through.
specialists for other things. We don't do open heart surgery on ourselves. I don't try and change my own oil. And so why, as a business person, aren't we thinking, I need a business attorney, I need a CPA, I need, I need a marketing expert, because our little brains just can't know everything.
No, and this is the joy of when you get to speak to the people that you do, just understanding that there's a plethora of different ways of being a part of business and being a business mentor, and so many different masterminds that there will be one that is the right fit for you and your business. And it's having those conversations. But as you said, crucially, don't be scared to ask for help.
Right.
So now,
and the nice thing is that we can now do this virtually, and so you don't have to worry that, Bob down the street's going to know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And the joy of it is you can get so many global minds in one mastermind. And I think because now we are living in such a global world, it's just, COVID absolutely helped us to realize we're not in our own little bubbles, and we're not in our own little towns. But the people who want to can be a part of that. And if that's what they want to do, but you can also get the benefit of the expertise, the knowledge, the mentoring of people elsewhere. So tell us now, are you still running your business?
I am. And like I said, a couple days every month I slow down, and I have had to learn that I have limitations. Because not only did I have breast cancer, I also had basal cell carcinoma. That always sounds horrible and awful. That's just your basic skin cancer, right? But I several years ago also had thyroid cancer. And so I've had 3 totally separate cancer diagnoses. And because of everything that I have gone through, my stamina is much shorter. I frequently will have to take a nap. I do have chronic pain, and so I have to kind of deal with that. And so I give myself the grace to go, okay, nope, today is not going to be a good day. Or think, I really got a lot of energy today, so let's get a whole bunch of stuff done, because then tomorrow I'll be down. But yeah, I keep working. Like I said, I love my clients and I love the work that I do. So it's great to still be able to do that.
And I think it's so important what you've said there is listen to your own body, because when you can do the work, do it. But when you know that you need to just down tools and it's not happening today, that's still okay too.
Right.
Yeah. Brilliant.
No is a full sentence.
I must admit, the first time I heard that, I struggled to get my head around it. And I think
usually it's no, but.
Yeah. or you need to add that justification or explanation. And just being able to say, actually, no. And then you kind of hold your breath and
what
wait.
What are they going to think of me? Who cares?
Yeah, right. But I think that is something that comes with experience and maturity. And I think self-knowing, doesn't it? Which, when you've been through everything that you've been through, you can't help but knowing yourself pretty well.
A big part of it is, I think, wow, y'all are getting excited about what? I almost died several times.
It's an incredible story. So tell people where they can find your podcast. Where are you hanging out? Are you on the usual channels?
Yes, I'm everywhere. And on social, I am only on Facebook and on LinkedIn, but the podcast is thebusinesspowerhour.com, but it's on all of the things.
All of the channels.
And so you can find it there. And you can find information about what I'm doing to help people who are dealing with cancer at yourcancerwarrior.com. And that is actually a landing page to take you to 2 different places. One is for anybody who's on a cancer journey, whether they have cancer or they, know someone who does. And the other will take you to, if you're a business leader and you're having to deal with this, you might need a strategic advisor during that time period.
And what better to have somebody who's been in the trenches and who knows what the pitfalls are to be able to offer something like that. Absolutely incredible. I want to ask you, as I always do to my guests before they leave, what is the one thing that you would like the listener to walk away from this episode with?
Well, again, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And hopefully we have helped folks. But what I tell people is what we've been talking about. You are in charge.
Nice. Yeah. So, folks, remember that. If necessary, write it in big on a Post-it note, stick it somewhere
on your chest.
On your chest.
On your arm. I have some things written on my arm.
Brilliant. And I think it is such an important reminder, because we often give away unknowingly at times our agency and our power and our ability to advocate for ourselves. So, Debs, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Conversation. There is so much other stuff we could have talked about. So, folks, please do check out the links. They will be in the show notes and they will be in the description. And if you have really enjoyed what you've heard, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And if you think that this is going to be useful to somebody that you know, then please do pass it on to them, because the more you can help people be aware of what is available in terms of information and who can help them, then the better for all of us. And I'm going to leave you with this, as I always do. We only have one life, as far as we know, and one body. So please look after it, because it is looking after you. Debs, thank you. Until next time, take care of yourselves.